but someone knows something, yet everyone plays ball. I say we round them all up, let's brain fingerprint them all.
Hello everybody, this is Eric Jose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover the Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey cases, but also as time passes I've been covering other cases such as the Staircase or OJ and many wrongful convictions of youth. I go over the documents, the photos, the videos, anything case related. So stay tuned because I have many more videos just like the one you're about to see. How you doing? Okay, so hey, we're here today to do a little video. This today is going to be about the testimony of the blood spatter expert Nick Stahlke. Mr. Capaldi and I were having a discussion a little bit about this recently, and we were kind of comparing him with Dwayne Devers from the Staircase over there in Durham, and so we were kind of discussing the differences, and the whole thing that we were kind of getting at was that ultimately, we think Stahlke was, motivated to help the state, motivated to help the prosecution and stuff. I would say, essentially, he's acting out of a desire to help his team get the W, to bring home the win, right? Whether and conviction is a win for them. I mean that, and it's kind of the problem with our system, is that the conviction is synonymous with win. Okay, it's the fact that when we screw up, it almost isn't something to think about, and that's why some of these really cases that shouldn't be brought get brought. But I digress. So we're going to be talking about Stahlke today. Now, those of you who who follow this stuff, you obviously know that Stahlke is the guy who Kathleen Zellner had a bone to pick with, the way he said that the blood spatter ended up on the interior of the RAV4 cargo door. He claimed that it was from Teresa's body because her hair was wet with blood, and that when she was being flung into the back of the RAV4, that somehow her hair flung drops of blood out onto the interior of that RAV4 cargo door. You saw an MAM2, Zellner and they tried to recreate that, and they couldn't. It was impossible to do, really. They couldn't do it. It was, but the way that they were able to get a very, very close pattern to what we see is by cast off from possibly beating somebody right by the driver's rear corner of the RAV4. And while they were bringing that, most likely a hammer or something broad, and when they were bringing that back, it was throwing spatter onto the RAV4 interior door. Because that door, if you imagine, here's your RAV4, and here's your cargo door, here's your passenger side, here's your driver's side. The cargo door opens like this, right? So that it ends up going perpendicular. It ends up going in line with the passenger side of the car. So it opens up 90 degrees and is parallel with the passenger side of the car. So somebody at the driver's corner could be easily then throwing it back onto there. So that's how that gets explained. Anyway, because of that, this guy's ridiculous claim that it was from the flinging of hair and that sort of stuff is just ridiculous. So that's where she came up with the whole scenario of how Teresa really died, and that's where she came up with the whole brain fingerprinting scenario, and so that's where that's why Stacy wrote the song Brain Fingerprint Them All, right? Very cool song. I love that song actually. So anyway, that's this guy. This guy is the blood spatter expert. I didn't put the stuff in about the RAV4 door. You guys have heard me talk about it before. I have another video about it. I'll see if I can grab that link and get it down below for you. But we go through a few other things here that I thought were interesting. So here we go. Hope you guys like it. All right. So I think this is an interesting bit because this is really an illustration of the prosecution trying to push things to further their narrative, which we all know is, highly flawed, and obviously they knew, because they're actually pushing here very hard to get one of their experts to testify to something that Dean ends up objecting to very strongly. He has very good reasons. And so anyways, I think this is just interesting, so we'll go through it real quick. This is from the prosecution's examination of Nick Stahlke, the blood spatter expert, in Stephen Avery's trial for the prosecution. Okay, so up here, Exhibit 193. And I would like you to tell the jurors whether the photograph that you have in your hand, is being shown on the big screen. Yes, it is. And this, I would like to ask you whether you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty whether this cut to the hand is consistent with being the bloody object that came in contact with the dashboard by the ignition switch of the RAV4. Attorney Strang: objection, foundation, personal knowledge, and entirely speculative. He has no idea on the timing of this. The court: I'm going to sustain the objection. I think at this point the witness has testified about expertise in blood transfer, but I don't think anything has been established about this photo. Attorney Gahn: could the blood stain that you observed on the dashboard of Teresa Hallbach's RAV4 have come from a cut to a finger? Yes. Attorney Strang: objection. This is beyond the scope of the disclosure under 971.03 as well, Your Honor. The court: I'm gonna have to ask you to elaborate on that, Mr. Strang. Attorney Strang: this is the opinion he is being asked to express, is not one included in his report or in the report or otherwise disclosed pursuant to any discovery request. In other words, it's completely new to them, right? Because it's not in any official reports, or it's never been said before, essentially, right? Attorney Gahn: Your Honor, I believe that the witness has testified with what a contact transfer bloodstain pattern is, that being a bloody source coming into contact with a surface that doesn't have any blood on it. I'm simply asking if a cut such as this is consistent with being the bloody source coming into contact with the dashboard. Attorney Strang: well, Your Honor, I mean, to the extent that if someone is bleeding, they can drop blood or brush it. We don't need an expert to tell the jury that. That's entirely within the canon of ordinary experience, and nothing from an expert is helpful on that point. The court: I guess I would like to hear a few more questions about his expert experience in this area. So far, we have heard something about 3 kinds of blood transfers, but that's about when you observe a transfer on another surface. But I think that's all I heard. Attorney Gahn: Mr. Stahlke, could you explain what is your experience with examining contact transfer bloodstains? Answer: contact transfer bloodstains it can be a transfer of a pattern. You can see in some stains the outline of the particular item that is bloody contacting the unstained surface. And in some cases, you can see the pattern or detail from the bloodied item that has been transferred then onto the unstained surface. And have you been to crime scenes and examined contact transfer stains? Yes, I have. Do you know how many you have been to? Well, I have been to approximately 200 field responses. Of those, then over 100 crime scenes. And in every scene that has blood present, I examine the stains to determine whether or not there would be any additional information that could be gained from those stains that would be helpful to the investigation. Do you also examine photographs of bloodstains? Yes. And do those help? Are you able to interpret bloodstain patterns from photographs? Yes. Many times we're asked by agencies that have processed their own scenes and taken their own photographs and then realized that maybe they could gain some knowledge or some valuable information from those stains. And this would be after the fact, and we would often be asked to look at photographs to analyze the bloodstain. And will those photographs include contact transfer stains? Yes, they do. Attorney Strang: Your Honor, this may be a good time to take up the subject out of the jury's presence. Court: all right. The court is going to excuse the jury for a few minutes. Jury not present. Judge Willis: the court, or Judge Willis, are you asking for the witness to be excused? You can step outside. Mr. Strang: Your Honor, I will tender the court a copy of the report that we received from Mr. Stahlke and a copy of his resume as well. It's a 2-page report. Nothing in that report suggests that the state intended to elicit from this proposed expert an opinion tying any particular injury to the blood patterns that he's testifying he observed. I don't know how he possibly could do that. Either without knowing personally, A, when this photograph was taken, and B, the likelihood that it was actively bleeding at any relevant time, which I think is probably well beyond his expertise. So this goes beyond disclosure, and that the state has provided, and gets into something both of which we don't have notice, and of which his own expertise or even personal knowledge is questionable. And finally, the point is simply that you could get a cut and may drop. You may be dripping blood, or may leave a blood stain if you brush your cut against something. Again, that's not a subject requiring an expert testimony at all. The court, Mr. Gahn. Well, Your Honor, I think the report speaks for itself. If you look under observations on page 1 of Mr. Stahlke's report, states that on the second, beginning with the second sentence, contact transfer stains were present on the driver's seat cushion, the passenger seat cushion, and on the dashboard near the ignition switch. And that's fine. Nobody questions his ability to describe what a contact transfer stain or a passive stain or a swipe or any other type of pattern looks like. The issue is tying it to any particular source. If I may finish, Attorney Gahn says, the next sentence states that these stains are the result of a bloody source coming into direct contact with those surfaces. That's what I asked him in the opinion. Is this cut consistent with the bloody source coming in contact with it? That's all I asked. Now, I would say, no, he's doing a bit more than that. He's actually trying to tie the picture of Stephen Avery's cut to the stain in the jury's mind in a very, very, very specific way. And that's what Dean is objecting to. He wants it to be, he wants the question to not really involve the picture at all, because Mr. Stahlke isn't really qualified to speak about the possible source, really. It's not his area of expertise. He may have some knowledge in that area, but it's not his area of expertise, and that's what Dean is basically arguing. So Dean Strang answers him by saying, not when the photo was taken, it's not. So that's the point Dean's making here. He's saying he doesn't know when this picture was taken. He doesn't know when that finger may have been bleeding at any relevant point in time, and there's a lot of basically unknowns and things that would be well beyond his area of expertise for him to be able to make that solid of a claim the way that the prosecution is asking the question, and so specifically trying to tie it. Dean is basically pointing out, no, they shouldn't be doing this. Number one, we had no notice that they were ever going to attempt to tie this picture to the bloodstain in the RAV. Anyway, really, I mean, this is a very interesting part of the testimony, to be perfectly honest. So, the court, or Judge Willis. Yeah, I think reading the report, the conclusion is that the bloodstains, or at least a couple of them, were consistent with an individual who was actively bleeding. I haven't heard the answer yet from the witness, so I wasn't sure where you were going. But if the witness was going to say that the particular pattern of the stain near the ignition matched this particular cut, it appears to me that would be going beyond what I see here in the report. So Judge Willis is essentially agreeing, kind of. It's weird. You're going to watch Judge Willis kind of not... It's like, yeah, almost like he's trying to give some concession to the prosecution. It's here as this goes. It's kind of weird, but ultimately you'll see it ends up. You'll see how it ends up ultimately. So anyway, here we'll continue. If you want to ask the witness, if whoever this is, if this person had been sitting in the vehicle and had a cut at the time it was actively bleeding, could that have caused the bloodstains? I think that's something that's within his expertise. That is contained, or that is within the conclusions that he drew in his report. But I think that's about as far as he can go. Attorney Gahn, we did not intend to go any further, Your Honor. No, his question already wanted to go further than that, because they were basically, well, here, we'll just watch them argue it out. It's interesting. The court, Mr. Strang, I don't know if you object to that or if that's inconsistent with what you are saying or not. Attorney Strang, no. If he is trying to link the blood patterns he saw to this photograph, we don't have any notice of that, and he is not qualified to do it. Neither does he have the foundation, since that doesn't appear to be something that's bleeding. And, he has no idea when the photo was taken or when the cut may have been actively bleeding. None of that I know of. And that would have been the purpose of notice. The court, what exactly are you proposing to ask him, Mr. Gahn? Just when I asked him the questions, whether he has an opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty whether this cut is consistent with being the bloody object that came in contact with the dashboard by the ignition switch. And I can add, if it were actively bleeding, if this cut were actively bleeding, could this be the source, the bloody source coming into contact with the dashboard? The court, Mr. Strang. Again, there's just nothing in the report that suggests that this witness was going to try to link a stain to any possible injury on Stephen Avery or anyone else. And I don't know how he would possibly do that other than a hypothetical. If it were actively bleeding, sure, but he doesn't know. Beyond, I can't. What hand is this? This looks to me like a left hand. Is that what this is? And that's what a lot of people thought when they looked at that picture that they're talking about right there, folks, of the cut on Stephen's finger. He's asking, is this a left hand or whatever? And a lot of people thought so too, but it actually was Stephen's right hand, all this stuff. But anyway, Dean's sitting there illustrating how we had no notice of this. I'm like literally trying to figure this out right now while I'm in court, trying to argue for my client. Like, I'm having to like sit here and try to figure this out right now, because that's, so it's just the prosecution playing more games, and Judge Willis is kind of like not fully understanding Dean, his issue here, which is interesting. So Attorney Gahn then says, Sergeant Bill Tyson testified that this was the right hand of Stephen Avery. Attorney Strang, where's the thumb? Maybe if it's being held like this, I suppose if the cut's on the outside of the right finger, sure, it looks like a left hand from here. The point is, Your Honor, we don't have any foundation for this from this witness, let alone notice. Right? The court, all right. As I think about it, I think I agree with the defense on this one. He can testify. He's already testified that it came from a cut that was actively bleeding. The jury has already seen this photo. They can determine if it looks like a cut that was one time actively bleeding. I just don't think for the witness level of expertise, there is really much he can add to that. So I'm going to sustain the defense's objection. Anything else before we bring the jury back in? If not, if someone can bring the witnesses back in, or the witness back in, we'll bring in the jurors. The court. Mr. Gahn, before they come in, any idea how long your direct will go? This is just he's hoping they'll finish today. Gahn says yes, we would hope to. Hopefully we can finish our cross today because Mr. Stahlke has an appointment tomorrow morning, and then so here's Dean Strang saying, I don't know where this is. And then the court says, well, we'll wait and see. And then Strang says, doesn't know where this is going. So, and then the jury's back. So then the court says, you may be seated. Mr. Gahn, you may continue. And basically, this is the result of that. And here it comes. Mr. Stahlke, this pattern that you observed on the dashboard of Teresa Hallbach's RAV4, is this pattern consistent with someone who could be actively bleeding on their right hand? To which he answers, yes, it's consistent with that. And the whole point here is that this does not tie the question and all of it all together with that photo, which was Dean's whole point. So very interesting. I mean, Judge Willis came around on this one, but it seemed kind of painful and like the long way around. But Dean, is very charismatic, and he argues well in court. And clearly he was able to get his point through to Judge Willis, and Judge Willis saw the merits in it eventually. So interesting stuff. So all right, let's move on to the next. All right, so that's a pretty interesting bit with Dean there, going back and forth. The prosecution's really pushing to get that extra bit to help push their narrative. And why is that? Well, it's because their narrative is weak. Their narrative is their narrative just isn't really. It doesn't hold much water. It has issues. The evidence isn't exactly very good. There's just plenty of issues with it, and so here you see them pushing for this to get this to the jury, where they hear a blood spatter expert saying that the exact wound in that photo could have caused that blood stain. And that's what the prosecution was going for. They tried to claim, we weren't going for that. All we wanted is, it's BS what you saw them claiming there. It's just the disingenuous nature of the state, obviously, right? So, all right. Now we're going to move into the next bit. And this is the bit where Dean, Mr. Stahlke, tries to allude that there could have been a cleanup in the RAV4. He makes a statement alluding to the possibility, and Dean just says, "Oh, is that so? Well, let's discuss it further." And it's so here we go. It's kind of funny. It's actually a little bit comical to watch. All right, so this is more with Nick Stahlke, the blood spatter expert for the state. Only this time now he's being questioned by Dean Strang. Just a few things that I didn't show you here. He talks about his background and stuff. He actually started out doing like very intricate drug testing, and from there moved into questionable documents, which is essentially handwriting analysis, and somehow from there, it's weird to me, but somehow from that moved into blood spatter. So this guy is doing quite a few things, and it seems like blood spatter is really kind of the last thing that he added, or that he tried to get into and stuff. So I suspect he's not as good at it as he would like. And the reason why I say that is, well, like I was talking about earlier, is that because of this guy, this guy's testimony is the one who claims that spatter on the rear cargo door, on the inside and on the interior of it, was from hair being flung off, like blood getting flung off of Teresa's hair onto the interior of that door while it was open, when she was being thrown into the back of the RAV4, and it's completely ridiculous. And Kathleen Zellner obviously has her theory about how that beveling in the skull really occurred, and that the spatter most likely came from a very broad, blunt object that was probably being used to strike Teresa at the rear of the RAV4. So that's what's also interesting about this guy's report and stuff. So, all right, this is an interesting bit because Dean asks him about any possible cleanup in the RAV, and it gets really interesting until Dean just has to basically smack him down almost. He just has to literally has to take him through the logic of it and everything. It's funny. But so here we go. You also saw no evidence that anyone tried to clean up or wipe away any blood stains in the RAV4 he's referring to. And he answers, "I can't say that's necessarily true. The amount of blood that was on the molding or on the side of the back storage area would indicate that there would have been additional blood stains on the carpeting that I did not see." So you understand what it is right there he's saying, folks. He's saying that he thinks that possibly blood was cleaned up off of the carpeting, but not off of the molded plastic wheel wells and stuff like that, right? Okay. So Dean asks, "And are you here telling us that someone cleaned up the carpet in the rear cargo area?" The answer, "There's a possibility of that, but there's nothing that indicates that occurred." He's suddenly walking it back, right? So Dean says, "Nothing at all that indicates that occurred, is there?" And then he answers, Stahlke answers, "Only the fact that the lack of a lot of staining on the carpet area would indicate there is a possibility there may have been some attempts to clean up the blood." Dean says, "All right. And do you think it would have been easier to clean up carpeting in the rear cargo area so that no blood was visible than it would have been to wipe plainly visible blood off of the plastic wheel well. Answer, that would make sense, yes. So he's saying that it would make sense. Okay. He's saying that it would make sense that it would be easier to clean up carpet than blood off of like hard plastic. That's basically what he's saying there. And Dean says, easier to clean the carpet? And then he says, no, I would say that if you are making attempts to clean all the blood in a particular scene or a vehicle, you would try to clean up all the blood, not just those areas that are carpeting. And so now he's starting to realize the lack of logic in what he said, and he's starting to walk it back. So it's funny. He goes, you mean the plastic? That was sort of a plastic composite in the wheel well cover on the inside of the cargo area, correct? And presumably could have been wiped off with a rag, a towel, a paper towel, something. Right, it could have. The carpet would have taken something that would get into the absorptive surface like the carpet. So, and he says, I don't understand your question. In other words, he doesn't understand how difficult it is to clean carpet. I mean, keep in mind, folks, I don't actually think this guy was like an active participant in this thing. In the big thing against Steven. I really think this guy is just a guy doing his job, and really he's just trying to help his team get the W. Really, I think that's all it is. There's no real malice here with this guy, but so keep in mind that's the way I feel about this guy. But look at him still attempting to try to give some credence to the prosecution's narrative, trying to say things that work in the state's favor, and only to have to see him try to walk it back because he realizes the illogic. And it's just so. Anyways, I don't understand your question. Some sort of cleaning solvent or something to get in. I mean, the carpet was an absorptive surface. Yes, it was. So Dean says, all right. And in any event, you have no idea at all whether anyone tried to clean blood off of the carpet in the cargo area or not. He says, no, I do not. So they had to get there in the end, but they got there. So, just interesting that he would even try to suggest a cleanup in there. I mean, if Steven's that good at being able to get blood off of carpet and everything and did such a wonderful job on the trailer in the garage, then how did he not do the same thing on the RAV? I mean, anyway, that whole bit about cleanup, that to me is just smacks of this guy wanted to help, the state, his team, his side get the win, get the W, right? And it's like, and he's just trying to say whatever he maybe can, what little things he can to try to further, the narrative they're pushing, which is obviously weak. So, anyways, thought that was interesting. All right, yeah. So one of the main reasons why I was just showing this today is because I'm trying to, I don't know if you guys are seeing it, but I'm trying to illustrate what it looks like. Somebody who is on the prosecution's team, and I'm saying, a lot of people, the guilters and stuff say, oh, you have to imagine hundreds of people were in on it. No. I think just a very few people were in on it. I think everybody else was just following suit, or as I've always said in the past, all compasses point north. If you think about law enforcement, prosecutor, DAs, and that sort of stuff, you think about them as compasses, all compasses point north. And that's what's going on with Stahlke, in my opinion. And with a lot of people in this case. But I'm trying to point it out where he's not trying to tell grandiose lies. It's not like with Colburn on the stand where you see him denying that he was looking at the back of that RAV4 when he called that in and stuff like that. It's not like that. The things that Stahlke is trying to do are more peripheral or just less crucial, but he's still trying to do his bit to give that little extra effort or oomph to help the state win their case, because that's what he wants. I don't know how much he's actually thought about the evidence in the case, to be perfectly honest, because I think with a lot of law enforcement officers, when it comes to the prosecution of cases, that they just don't question. They go in and they do their best to help their side win. And when I say their side is the state, the prosecution, the DA, and that sort of stuff. So I believe even these expert witnesses and stuff, these people from the crime lab, all of them, they all come in and they all are motivated to help their side win. And I don't think it's a malicious thing or that they're involved. And then, so hopefully that's what I'm kind of trying to illustrate here today is looking at Stahlke. Stahlke's a good, example of it, where he's not, he's trying to do his bit to help, but it's not like overt. Like I said, like the way the way Andy is, and with the way they find the key, or with the way he calls in the RAV4 2 days before, and that sort of stuff, right? Okay, so that's what I'm hopefully trying to illustrate here, and Stahlke's definitely one of those ones. It's an all compass pointing north situation, and that's why we don't have to have everybody involved in this. We can have a very small number of people, and the rest of it is all compasses pointing north. All right, so we're going to go into one last bit here where Dean kind of puts it to Stahlke, and he basically kind of just goes, he kind of points out some of the obvious things here that are some pretty obvious issues, and just so that the jury can hear Mr. Stahlke answer these questions, and it's very again a little bit comical to watch. So putting in this bit just because it's funny to watch Dean put him through this, because after going through all this Spatter stuff and especially that bit about the potential cleanup or whatever, and so Dean just goes and hits him with this stuff here, and it's great. So he says, question, now tell us what blood you found on the exterior door handles of the Toyota. Answer, I did not find any blood on the exterior door handles. Tell us about the blood you found on the interior door handles. I did not find any blood on the interior door handles. How about the blood you found on the steering wheel? I did not observe any blood on the steering wheel. Did you look? Yes. No blood at all on that steering wheel. I didn't see any visible blood on there, no. Question, see any blood on the gear shift lever? I don't recall that I did, no. This was an automatic transmission Toyota, as you remember, right? So there's a lever somewhere in the center console. Yes, he says. With something like that, one has to squeeze it to take the vehicle out of park. Correct. You examined that closely? Yes. Saw no sign of blood? Not that I recall. Nothing observable or visible. So, it's funny to me because Dean is just sitting there going through all the places where blood should have obviously been from somebody who's actively bleeding, but yet it isn't there. And so I just found that part to be particularly interesting and even a little amusing. So decided to add that in. So moving on. So dude, that was funny. That is really, I mean, he's like, obviously he's going for everything that Steven would have needed to touch to get in that car, operate that car, all those things. Why is there no blood there? Or tell us about the blood you found there. Oh, we didn't find any there. Oh, okay. Oh, how about the blood you found on the gear shift? No. How about on the interior handles? No. How about anywhere it should be? Right? Oh. Anyways, so yeah, Dean is brilliant. He, just that part where he calls him out about the potential cleanup, and I mean he dispels that real quick, and I thought that was brilliant. So it's like I said, this is, I think, an example of the fact that there's a lot of people in this case that are just like the compass pointing north, but they aren't actually involved in the actual dirty dealings. They're obviously doing their part. They're obviously trying to help their team get the W, but I think there's a difference between trying to help your team get the win and doing things like Colburn and Lank and that sort of stuff. Or like Wiegert and Fassbender with Brendan. It's a whole different story compared to those acts, to those things that those guys did. They want to help their side, and so they're fudging things in a minimal way to make their testimony better. You know what I mean? But they're not going to the lengths that we see from Wiegert, Fassbender, Colburn, Link, and that sort of stuff, right? So hopefully I've been helpful in illustrating that difference, and using Nick Stahlke's testimony as a way of doing that hopefully helps. I know I've talked about this before, how I really feel it's only a handful of people that were actually actively involved in this, in the really dirty dealings here, and I really truly think that most of the rest of them were just going along with it as it was and backing up their brothers and that sort of thing, and all compass this Point North situation, right? Okay. I hope I've said enough about that. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this one today about Nick Stahlke. Hope you guys, I hope to see you guys next time. And if you haven't already, please hit subscribe. We'll see you.
The day always comes if you're innocent.
Get on the train before it leaves the station. Wisconsin versus Avery, a complete fabrication. Get on the train before it leaves town. The truth train is coming, gonna run them down, run them down. And we all know Stephen and Brendan were blamed, but it does not take a brain surgeon to see that they were framed. And yes, we know what this was about. The civil suit, the settlement, they did not want to pay out, want to pay out. And you may hear this song, or maybe you don't get it. I suggest you look up TikTok, Manitowoc on Reddit. There you will find trial transcripts, evidence files, and reports. And you will start to fathom the corruption within the courts. And as you shake your head because everything seems demented, you will find yourself in company of 3 on-bank judges that dissented. But don't you worry, you're not going insane. You just happen to sit down on Zellner's Truth Train. Get on the train before it leaves the station. Final destination, inevitable exoneration. Get on the train before it leaves town. The truth train is coming, gonna run them down, run them down. Get on the train